The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of SFM.
So welcome to today's episode of Behind the Rack. We have a special guest, our first guest actually of our podcast, Wade Bussey from Furman and Panamax, the nice group, to discuss the brand and probably the most underrated topic in AV, power, and so much more. And a very exciting podcast, an episode you won't want to miss. So grab your headphones, pull up a chair, and join us for some honest, sometimes nerdy, always fun conversations, all happening behind the rack. Wade.
Good morning.
Nice to have you.
Great to be here.
And in our new podcast studio.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. This place looks great. Really like it.
Yeah.
It's very sharp.
We appreciate you coming and kind of giving us just some cool conversation about power. And you're from Furman and Panamax. And I know Furman and Panamax, you know, just in the power space, I find it's a very, very underrated topic.
It's always been behind the scenes for Panamax, well, especially for Furman since the foundation. But I want to take the opportunity for joining your first podcast and talking a little bit about product and power. That's awesome. Great. Appreciate that.
Why don't you give us a little bit of a background? I think there's a bit of a cool story behind Furman. Why don't you give us a little glimpse into that?
You know, it's kind of fun because the rock and roll world is peppered with great stories and legacy for sure. And Furman is one of those brands. You know, they founded and was part of a very famous rock band, the Grateful Dead, and servicing product, fortifying product, making sure that the stage kits go up, go down consistently and reliably was some of the fundamental parts of development of Furman. At that time, it was not Furman. It was more of a service company and a show company that made sure that everything worked, and what didn't work got improved and got better. And then from there, some of the early products were sort of formed in ideas of trying to make those show kits and those stage performances, those rock concerts more reliable, more consistent, of course, sound better. The most important thing was sound better. And it was kind of unique. And from there, sort of the Furman story starts with a lot of color that happens in the stories and the development from there on.
That's amazing.
And where the name Furman comes from?
The name Furman comes from the founder. And the founder was basically Columbia University out of New York City. Got a Bachelor of Science in Electronics Engineering and had a passion for music. And typically when you come out of science studies like that, you go into aerospace or defense and different things that really challenge the mathematics of it. But the passion inside the student was still for music and was fascinated with rock and roll and the whole, a scene that was developing at that time in the early 70s. And headed west, headed to California, and decided that, he was going to go with the passion, skip the money, and start with the tour band and, in a service group and really kind of hone the skill of what he liked while enjoying the atmosphere and the colleagues around him.
Thanks. Amazing.
Yeah.
I know, just to kind of step back a bit, you have a great appreciation for sound. I know I've known you for quite a long time. What's your background? Give us a little bit of your background.
Oh my. So I started doing 12 volt when I was just getting old enough to drive a car. So 15, 16, I became fascinated with the environment of audio inside of a car. And at that time in the mid-'80s, I'm dating myself now, but that time in the mid-'80s, the factory equipment was very, minuscule. It was very, the least cost affordable was provided by the factories. And the aftermarket opportunity was huge. And with the aftermarket opportunity came, cell phones, came car alarms, auto starters, things our industry and automotive never had. And then from there became upgrades. The compact disc came out, and now you could have a very durable product that you could put in the dash, and it was very portable. So now people wanted to do what they used to do to their engines and their chassis and their cars to make them go fast. Now they want to make them go loud. And I was fascinated by that. Funny story with my dad. We'll share in another podcast of me being fascinated with it and him not so fascinated with it.
There's an overlapping story here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw our first episode. You and I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
that's a pointed comment that you
we'll do that. We'll do that on the next one. Within 12 volt, it was really sky's the limit, and manufacturers were just so focused, and it seemed like every month, every year, it revolutionized itself. So I was immersed in 12 volt right up into, I would probably say, the early 90s, and went right to the top, building sound pressure machines and stuff, looking at the mechanics of what sound and pressure. And what I learned a lot about automotive electrical systems is they're not quiet. They're very noisy, and they're very problematic, and they're very unreliable. And all your power comes from the battery that is given in the car and the alternator that's sort of attached to it. So you quickly learn that, much like a stage band, looking for a tour group, you have to fortify. You have to make sure that this, if you're going to ask more demand of it, more performance of it, you have to supply the key source, which is the power. And that got me started, figuring out 12 volt conversions, bigger alternators, stiffening power supplies. And that rolled right into my next generation of esoteric audio, getting into ultra high end. And all these amplifiers that were worth tens of thousands of dollars and speakers worth tens of thousands of dollars were all being plugged into the utility grid, whatever the house was provided. So if it was a new area, it typically had newer wiring, but a lot of where I grew up in Toronto, it was older neighborhoods, the power grid was 60, 70 years old, and along came the problems. So we had these great amplifiers, and we'd plug them in at different homes, and we had different problems. And it was never the same problem twice. So we had to try to figure out how do we tame this power issue? Because the noise and the backwash that was happening within the home and around the home was becoming part of the environment. And now we had another sale to make. You've got this great system. Now that we've seen these, issues in the power from the utility company and the noise coming back and forth from your appliances and different things in the home, this backwash needs to be removed. Yeah. And then the customer would be a little overwhelmed. We're like, well, didn't you take this, into consideration? And we say no, because everywhere you go, much like stage and touring, yeah, every city, every stadium, every location, every bar that you plug into has its own backwash, it has its own noise, has its own appliances that impact the performance of what it is that you're doing. And if you turn up the white noise on a television to mid-volume and you try to have a conversation, you're not having the same conversation. But we can bring that white noise down to an absolute zero and have that conversation. You can have it with much more detail, much more dynamics, and much more interest as well. So then started our journey in retail, trying to isolate power, isolate noise, isolate electronics, different units in the system from interfering with each other as well, especially in the coming age of digital and switching power supplies. And then from there, came out of high-end audio into custom integration and automation. So then started to work on how to automate an entire home. And that magnified it, because now we have sound throughout the home and multiple amplifiers and multiple devices used throughout the home, and a tremendous amount of wireless and RF radio frequency and a lot of different interference now. Now the refrigerator is affecting the video performance and different appliances we never took in consideration. So now the next evolution was, how do we filter out audio video interference frequencies that are in range? And
And
from
we're
there,
talking about we were talking about yesterday about subwoofers and even having capping, especially as I think as the audio world evolved, especially on the residential side, subwoofers were getting larger and larger amplifiers, and now even power caps were needed for.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely a Furman technology. We were using it in 12 volt. We would put these big Farad caps, these large caps, to try to give the 12 volt battery some relief by storing 200 to 300% of the energy of the battery in a cap. So when the amplifier hit 200% or 300% of a bass note or piano or a guitar jam, the amplifier didn't wash out of power from the battery. It had this big reserve. And that was a technology that transferred over, well, it didn't really transfer over, but really came from the music industry, because you had these big explosive moments, in the finales or at the end of the solos where a lot of the instruments are playing all at once for a tenth of a second, and the amplifiers need, in the home, there's 15 amps of service. On the rigs, there's hundreds of amps of service. So if you have an amplifier that's kilowatts of power in a 15 amp service, you need power factor, which is a Furman technology where it has a large reserve and deliver up to 80 amps for a tenth of a second and deliver that power that it needs, and not increase the impedance or the resistance of the wall, because it's hard to get that much power instantly out of an outlet. So it's kind of like a reserve power station that moves extremely fast to the dynamics of music, different from a UPS. A UPS is very slow and steady, and Furman power factor is spontaneous and fast in the nanoseconds, and that's what amplifiers are looking for when they need that 200, 300% millisecond of energy to make the note and not compress it or clip it.
Anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off in your journey.
In my journey. So I journeyed out of esoteric home into automation. I figured out a lot about automation. And kind of like many people in our industry, as they come through, you get ideas, and then you get interested in, how do we make this better? How do we change this? What is the next step? What's going to be the next step 2 years from now, 3 years from now? How do you make a difference? You've been at so many different avenues of in the field. You're like, what's the next step? And I got fortunate enough that a manufacturer called me and said, we really like what you're doing in the retail and to the stores and your systems and your designs and all that stuff. We could kind of use a guy like you to help, teach and help others to sort of grow their business and do that, because it's the avenue of prosperity for everyone. And we really want good systems out there. And we really appreciate the fact that someone, and companies take the time to do that. So I moved into vendor manufacturing. And then, I've been selling, when I was doing esoteric audio, of course, my very first solution was presented by you guys, by SFM in the early 90s. A young gentleman came to me with a rather heavy box. It was extremely heavy. It wasn't very large, but it was extremely heavy and dense. And it was an IT reference, and put it down on the counter. He goes, I want you to try this. And I said, I'm game, but we have a couple of systems that have a lot of electrical problems and noise due to the devices that are installed, the appliances and furnace and stuff. He goes, give it a shot. He goes, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna work. Man, we plugged that IT reference into the wall, and all the Furman patents that are still today, that are still being used in the IT reference series, were in that unit. And we plugged it in, and it was like hitting the mute button. It was like unplugging the microphone. Everything just went quiet. The noise floor was there. All the gear got the voltage, and it just got what it needed to perform. And the system started to do something we didn't expect. Not only did we get rid of the noise, but we actually improved dynamic performance. So because we have such a low noise floor, we're now hearing things, minutiae, footsteps and fabric movement and toe tapping. And we could almost tell the style of shoe he was wearing, whether it was a leather sole or a rubber, by the way it was hitting off the stage. So now we had, transients. We had sound that we simply didn't have before. The second thing, which I learned about, was power factor. And that was, the reserve of dynamic current that was sitting inside the reference series. And then when the dynamics went off and the kettle drums hit and the cymbals crashed, power factor came in. And then we took it out of the system. We were ready to live with the noise, but we did not understand how cymbals and how the impacts, how percussion suddenly, and guitar detail suddenly became more apparent and more present in the music stage. So we took it out, plugged it in, took it out, plugged it in, went home, went back to the store, tried to do a blind test, invited some great customers, invited some speaker manufacturers, some amp manufacturers in, did the A/B test. It's like, please tell me it's not me, because there is a sort of a psychoacoustics that when you improve something that it improves. Yeah. So we wanted a blind test. So we covered the racks and we just plugged things back and forth, and everyone's like, yeah, that's great. What did you change? Was it the cable? Did you put a better CD player in? Like, is it a different amplifier? We're like, no, it's the power conditioner. Wow. And they're like, what? It's the power conditioner that's making everything that's existing. Yeah. And we were chalking it up to 10 to 15% better performance at a minimum basis. So we would do that. Now we incorporated power into our demo. It's like, hey, here's our system. Great. This is going to be a non-audio part, but an important part. And we'd plug in the Furman piece into the integration of the system, and then we'd turn it on. It was almost instantaneous. Like, oh yeah, absolutely. That's as important as another component part of the system. So that's how we started.
Wow, that's so impressive. And I'm sure you have that conversation more than once, because I think even me on the resi side, I've realized that you don't even have to get into that high end stuff, or even on that stage, to realize that the power that we get in certain areas, I'm sure the area that I'm in now is even worse. But even just having a good unit, I think we can safely say objectively hear the difference. I mean, it's especially just reducing the noise floors. I'm not talking about the dynamics, but just reducing the noise. I think I can objectively say that it makes a huge difference.
I would agree. And later I found out through awareness that filtering, that power factor, were made in other units. In the Prestige series and the Merit series, it wasn't just in the most expensive series out there. So then we had dealers that were coming in saying, oh, I need a new amplifier, I need a new receiver. It just doesn't have the, what I think it should have. It's warrant. We would go and then plug it into a Furman piece, reduce the noise floor, introduce, and now a off-the-shelf, under $1,000 home theater receiver, stereo receiver integrated suddenly came back to life, and customers were going home with a product that they knew and loved, that they invested in years ago, going home with this new device.
With this new sound.
With this new sound from the exact same equipment they had. All we did was add the Furman product to it. So it was revolutionary, and we had a tremendous amount of fun doing that. Nah, you don't need new stuff. You need a power conditioner. And they're like, they would come at the usual power strip, right? You buy from inexpensive box store and stuff like that. And we're like, no, that's not the same.
It's so misunderstood.
It's a component. It's an important component of it. And its foundation came from live stage, which is probably one of the noisiest ground loop, humming and buzzing environments with inconsistent...
And ground lift.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Let's fix that issue. Let's remove the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's remove the ground.
We all have some needle nose pliers in our in our tool bag somewhere.
Yeah, 3-plug to a 2-plug. Yeah, dangerous stuff, especially at 100 amps. Yeah. So that was and then coming out of that in the residential market, suddenly I knew that selling this power component was as important as any component that was in the system, if not more. So now a lot of focus when I moved into the manufacturing side and the Furman and Panamax team was, tell me more and tell me why. And I'm sure we'll get chance and time to discuss it as these podcasts go on. But it's probably one of the most underestimated improvements you can make with the least amount of investment. We have a lot of this technology in our floor bars. We make 9 to 12 different designs of floor bars with each level of performance increased before you get into a rack unit. So it doesn't have to be expensive, but it needs to have the patented technology and the awareness of, of what the systems do prefer and don't prefer.
And do you feel that the difference of a power conditioner was more noticeable when everything was analog, or now that lots of equipment is using digital transmission and not anymore any, microphones, wireless microphones are now using digital transmission instead of like true RF or true analog transmission? You feel that it was more noticeable like 10, 20 years ago, the power conditioning, than it is right now with digital?
That's a great question. And I'm glad you asked that, because it was one of the things as we developed at analog, phono, and tape, moving into CD digital and download streams, and then the devices became different. We had added networks, now we're adding wireless networks and wired networks and LAN cables to streamers. We have a lot more dynamics of where's the ground coming from, where's the offset voltage going, and where is this noise being generated from. I think one of the things that was introduced very early in development of Furman, and subsequently Panamax as well, was the linear lift filtration. So instead of attacking certain frequencies like a switching power supply or a digital power supply or backwash of a certain device, most filtering takes care of the noise that your fridge makes, your stove makes, your microwave makes, devices in the home or devices in the stage. What Furman did different than anyone else is they took an entire frequency range that is audible. So any frequency that is in the audible range is filtered, and any frequency in the video range is filtered, and it's suppressed in a linear fashion.
Right.
So now when new devices get introduced into the system, and previous and other manufacturers would have a notch filter for each kind of frequency that the common devices would interfere with, the notch filters didn't need adjustments. We had a wide spectrum of audio and video range of noise filtration that allows our units to go decades, with newer technology being introduced, go decades and still perform and still keep the audio video floor very low and very noise free. So it's a great question, because as a manufacturer, we try to break our stuff as often as possible. We get paid to do it. We like to do it. And it's kind of hard, especially when creating a noise floor inside those two brands.
That's crazy. That was a great question. I didn't even think about it, but because everything moved into digital, I was like, it's true.
Yeah. And he was talking about his experience with like analog device.
That's right.
Guitar amps, stage.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, that's good. And wireless as well, because you have these RF, and then you had Zigbee, and you have Wi-Fi, you have all these different devices that create different radio frequencies. But if you focus on filtering the audio range and the video range as the noise suppression, everything brings it down effectively.
That's incredible. Actually, just on a small parentheses, Franco and I were talking, actually even with Hugo, when we're talking about network switches, and I know I have a Panamax at home, but it's the whole point of being able to switch, like everybody's going into network switches now, and we realize that having to cycle devices on the network is super important, and doing it through the power, even devices that are outside the network sometimes just need a good cycle, once a week. I think that's a cool thing that you guys are able to do it with your devices.
BlueBOLT was one of the early adopters. There was a company out there many years ago with basic control called Oversee, and we wanted to sort of Panamaxify it. We wanted to make it better. We wanted to this is great.
Maybe to clarify, BlueBOLT is a protocol that enables you to remote your device externally from the network. Am I correct?
Correct. We have a series of products. Yep. BlueBOLT is an IP-based remote management system that allows you to remote in or in behind a firewall or outside of a firewall. It goes to a cloud control or a local control and allows you to manage and monitor and, of course, control particular banks of outlets or individual outlets, depending on the device that you have. So BlueBOLT was really, it was interesting when BlueBOLT launched because there was a lot of blank faces and odd stares. Like, why would we need this?
Right.
and at that time, digital music download or streaming as a data service, either your home or your cellular, was not affordable. What we have today is, we can go on a phone and we have an 80 gig plan to stream live TV in our phone. Megabytes back in that time, and even your home service was very limited to a very restricted amount of data. So people were, they just didn't understand why we need to manage power and why were networks so important. Fast forward 12 years later, most homes now are highly integrated with networks and network control. And what we learned early with networks is sequencing. Just like we learned with Furman, sequencing is very important. The modem takes the turn on time. It takes a while for it to turn on, get an IP, get settled down, and get ready for action. Yeah. If we turn all the devices like the switch on at the same time as the modem, the switch gets an empty call. Yeah. It doesn't get any connection. So now things are out of sequence. So we learned very quickly that the importance of BlueBOLT was not just the remote capability of keeping service trucks at bay and being able to see what's going on into a home without mobilizing something that's cost effective, or the homeowner guessing at what it is. We could add these sequencing factors into BlueBOLT remotely. And then we could do it automatically. So then we gave a service of check boxes. Would you like to do this automatically? So with BlueBOLT, it will actually communicate. It will ping on a regular basis and make sure it always has a connection. And then when it doesn't, you have a few different options. It can call a friend. It can call a technician. It can call the homeowner. It's really up to you to select what it does. Or you can just leave it alone and it will wait and then start cycling its system and just going through to see if it was a power glitch or, maybe a storm or something like that caused the protection activity to go off and, do its due diligence there, and then the network would restart. Many times it's a utility company. And this is where a lot of homeowners and integrators and network people get kind of frustrated, because when the utility company goes down, everyone calls the modem provider. And if you're an integrator and you've integrated your network to the modem provider, they now call the integrator. So now the integrator is getting mobilized, trucks on the road, service call. Maybe it's, after hour service or weekend service, because it's always the way power works. It's never when you want it
always at the worst possible time.
It is, like 11:30 on a Sunday morning before the game starts at 1, bloop, the network goes down. So BlueBOLT gave you the ability to look into the home, look into the system, to auto-correct itself, to auto-heal. Is kind of a term that we've been using for a lot of for a lot of the marketing and stuff, because it's actually called auto-healing inside BlueBOLT. So let it do its job, and if it is a utility out, we have a proactive mechanism where it actually reaches out and communicates and says, hey, this service is out. We are working in our program to reset it and get it going. But, you may not need to mobilize the truck because it's not our equipment. Yeah. It's utility company. So dealers love that. Integrators love that. And with the BlueBOLT system, we could have thousands of dealers on thousands of customers on dealer accounts, and that gives them the ability to really see their whole mesh network of clients throughout a large city or even remotely over large distances, and add some ability to restore the comm, restore the network, keep the cars and the trucks off the road, and the service team out being profitable, working on systems and commissioning new systems, and obviously as a proactive, gets to reach out, ensure the relationship with the customer, and says, hey, everything is okay. Your system's fine. The utility company is out right now. We're seeing multiple outages across our system in your area. And when your utility company comes back online, your system will auto heal, auto reset and sync, and you'll be up and running.
It's such an interesting topic because, as an AV person, the first step to troubleshooting or the first question someone will ask,
how many times did you reboot?
Did you reboot the system or did you reboot the component?
Yep.
But like we were saying, it's so overlooked, yet it's the first question that is always asked. Did you reboot? Yeah. Wade, I had a question for you. We spoke a little bit about the origins from Pro and Live, coming from Pro and Live myself. I think when we talk about consumer behavior or our plan, when we're setting up something for Pro and Live, or a rack in this case, the first thing we do is, okay, what are our components? How big is my power conditioner? Where's my Furman going, right? That's the term everyone uses. And then we plan the rack from there. So it's something that's so important because of the different locations, the different power that we're encountering at all the different applications that we're visiting. And then you go into, we spoke about hi-fi audio, let's call it that, or the audio files.
You said esoteric.
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 Yes.
I think those people will realize the importance of power, to your point. And they realize, okay, it's not just my components. I really need to be managing the full flow of what's happening through my equipment. Let's start off with the power. Wow, what a difference. Then we talk about automation or resi. And you quickly realize, there's people putting the dollar store power bars into their racks. It's something that's so overlooked. Do you think now with the introduction of IP control or IP power conditioners, that's starting to change the mentality a little bit? It's making people realize, okay, this has to be the base of my rack, just like it is in Pro and Live.
It's starting to. It's stronger than it's ever been. And what we did is we incorporated the audio and video and the linear filtering into the IP control. So now you have the trifecta. You have all the patented technology that came from Furman and Panamax. You have all the filtering and all the noise floor reduction that you need as well. And then you have the IP control. So it's the trifecta. You get everything in one box, in one purpose, and for many of our warranties, they're either lifetime with a $5 million coverage on catastrophic, which is backed by Nationwide throughout the US. And it's kind of like we do replacement value at market. We don't do replacement value of your unit 8 years ago at appreciation. So we do it right. We have a lot of confidence in our product. We do make sure that we train on something called the circle of power. And the circle of power means that surge can come in through a lot of different areas. Now you have a coax line that may be going to the house, or you have a telephone line that's going to the house. Well, those lines are in the ground, and those lines are also connected to all your neighbors and all the street poles and all the infrastructure in your community. Now your community may get hit by lightning, and that's a very catastrophic, very important event. And it will go through every conductor it can. It has no stop. It has no filters. It will go as far as it wants, as far as their energy is there, and it will happen in very, very quickly, picoseconds. And what's kind of missed out with a lot of manufacturers is that we have coax protection, we have cable and Ethernet protection, and we have power protection all included on our Panamax devices and included on the Furman devices. And these are important because the circle of protection is you may have protected the power from lightning, but the lightning may have hit the local cable service,
right,
or the local telco company, and now the lightning is coming in over your telco line, and it needs to be stopped. So we always encourage, we build we have modules that are done at your demarc locations in the house. Make sure that the demarc is surge protected and suppressed for the telco and the coax. If not, we do local as well. So built in each one of our units, will give you the ability to then locally plug in telco, coax, and power. And it's that IT portion of it. People never thought, a DSL or coax line coming in could be a conductor. Even if we had heavy rains or snow and the lightning hits a tree locally by, it will energize the wet ground and energize the cable that's buried into it, and can also bring surge into the home. So there's a lot to it, and many companies miss that fact. But when Panamax first started that, we were just starting DSS satellites. So DirecTV was just starting, and Bell Media and stuff were just starting to get people to strap satellite dishes to their chimneys or posts or metal scaffolding, right? Lightning rods. And some were being grounded, some were not. Some were DIYers, some were, pro companies. So it's very inconsistent. So now you have a metal dish posed beside your house.
At the highest point of your house.
At the highest point of your house.
Metal scaffolding.
Yes, on metal scaffolding, exactly. Basically a calling card to Lightning saying, if you're,
I'm right here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
If you're looking for somewhere to go, I'm your guy. and then it would come in over the coax, right? The RG6 or the RG59, depending on how it was wired. It would come in over the coax, and the DSS manufacturers were smart. They built this protection in. They did it. And their way of building the protection was to dissipate it out, everything else but their circuit. So if you had audio or video cables connected to this device, connected to a receiver, connected to a TV, guess where the surge went? It went straight through the satellite box and went straight into whatever it was attached to. And power is a unique thing. It's a bi-directional system. Noise and surge is bi-directional. So bidirectional noise in a residential neighborhood can be almost up to 200 feet. So it's not that, you don't have a 20 amp, table saw, power saw, or arc welder in your house and it's causing noise, but your neighbor might, or someone within 200 feet of your home might. Yeah. And when you go into multi-dwelling units and condos and apartment, and if you look within a 200, circumference radius of your apartment, all the devices that are in those homes are all feeding energy and noise back and forth. And if something shorts out or something's not working properly, that surge all comes to you. And it may come through the telco, it may come through the coax, or it may come through the power line. So the circle of protection is just one of those things that through the DSS industry, Panamax and Furman figured out really quick. And that's why Nationwide is backed, and why we have lifetime warranty up to $5 million on some of our products, to make sure that the customer feels secure and that the investment that they've made is real. It's tough to explain sometimes to consumers, because lightning really happens, but the instance is very low.
It's almost like it has to happen in order for them to realize that, oh yeah, okay, now I got some devices. There's a lot of anecdotal stories until it happens to them. And then the first time I bought a unit was, I had a Lutron system in my theater room, and I had my digital set-top box plugged in the coax, not into the unit yet, not into the power conditioner yet, but I would just dim the lights and hear the hum in the speakers.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is terrible. And it was a digital set-top box. It was the coax, the RJ6 coming in. That was problematic. So ended up getting like a Panamax unit, plug in the coax, just
instantly.
Yeah.
And you're so right. It takes the experience of one to start the story. We have a lot of storm states in the southern parts of the U.S. Where lightning and rain and a lot of wind.
A little.
and these events happen. the Tornado Alley is one of the few places in the world that actually experiences the high level of tornadoes out of there. And of course, with rain comes lightning, with storm and all that stuff. And you'd be surprised because every customer that we talk to after a lightning event, they're 100% sold. They're like, I couldn't believe it would blow a hole this big or take out half my chimney, because a lot of these DSS dishes were mounted to chimney stacks. And the lightning would hit and take out the chimney or take out part of it. And of course it would, collapse and do different things, in the home and around the home. And customers were like absolutely, kind of shocked. But that's really not the most common use of surge suppression and protection. It's the everyday. If you have tools and microwaves and well, not for me, hair dryers, but, every time you let go of that device, there's another back surge, where the demand is kind of like an elastic. It pulls the power out, and now the power to run the high current device is out. And when you let go of that switch and that power device is turned off, well, there's kind of this elastic effect called EMF, where the current goes back into the line or the voltage goes back into the line because there's no draw, and gives everything just a little bit of a bloom, a little bit more higher voltage than normal. And that's not something that wears appliances or products down, in these individual events. But after months, after years of these small increment things, it does wear through the appliance and it does wear them out prematurely. And we always found in the esoteric world, in the high-end audio, people that had power conditioners, had amplifiers that were, I've seen some very old Furman pieces, 20 plus years, 25 years old, 30 years old, in these esoteric audio systems. And we keep saying, maybe you should, update your amplifier. He's like, no, works fine. Works like the day I bought it. And sounds like the day I bought it. And we're like, well, no sale here. Let's go for speakers. But yeah, because they simply, it's doing what? It's creating that buffer between the utility and the unknown of surge and suppression, and really protecting the home, and more importantly, stages. Mobile power is one of the hardest, especially with outdoor concerts. Mobile power and
absolutely
diesel generation. They're making sine wave, they're making power, and different devices turn on and off, and especially lighting systems. Oh boy, lighting systems take a few amps of current to run. Those
darn lighting guys.
Yeah, we're gonna get might get hate mail now, but lighting is another one of those dynamic things, right? Everything on, everything off, everything on, everything off, right? And everyone knows, if you turn on 50 light bulbs in your house, you're going to be consuming a lot more energy. And then if you start turning them on and off, on and off, on and off, you look at that energy transits that happen. That's the demand on power. Well, if you look at an amplifier between, someone on a snare drum and some cymbals, or plucking an acoustic guitar, it's the same on and off effect that's happening inside the electronics, but it's happening way faster. So, making sure that your stage rig and making sure that your stadium or your mobile power is based in the foundation of Furman, so it understands how to disconnect. We have a product called the P3600, and that basically insulates you from whatever you're connected to and creates an environment that's you're only connected to the Furman world, and the Furman world knows what's going on. So it really gives the entire industry a good, safe feeling, knowing that whatever they're plugging into, wherever they're going, wherever they are in the world, Furman kind of has that ability to isolate you from all the bad stuff and only make sure that your rig and your stage and your performance is going to work the way it's intended to.
Wade, I have to compliment you because I know a little bit about electrical and power, but you have such a eloquent way of explaining it, and such a simple way of making analogies and just making everyone understand the importance of it. So I got to compliment you because I'm learning so much today.
Too.
And it's a lot of fun to learn about.
That also raises the bar for our next
it does. It does. It really, really does. But it's fun to be learning about these things because, as we said, it's often so misunderstood and overlooked.
Yeah.
And Yeah, he explains it so well, so well.
We're getting close to the end of the episode. Unfortunately, we could stay here for another 3 hours and we'd have fun. But I wanted to finish, maybe not finish right now, but just a question. What is the oldest Furman? You mentioned 25 years, like a few minutes ago, but what's the oldest piece of Furman equipment you've seen in use recently?
Some of the original PL8s. So one of the very first Furman products introduced in the mid 80s, 85 was a rack mount power distributor so that you could plug all your guitars amps into, because everyone used sort of mobile. They didn't use rack. Rack wasn't big in the 80s. And sales guy from California, when their sales meetings, say, hey, why don't we put some lights in this? This would be really cool. So they figured out a way to put 2 aluminum sleeve lights, 12-watt lights into the unit, and it had 8 outlets, so 8 amps could plug into it. And those units are still produced today. We're in a Dash 2 now, and seeing some of the original designs and some of the original units of the PL8s, power, light, 8 outlets. And still sell it today in a product line. Like we still have those, and customers do call. They're like, hey, if they'll send a picture. It's like, I have this PL8. Do you still make something like that? I'm like, identical.
We still make the PL8.
We still make the PL8. Yeah. We'll send you another one. So I think that's probably one of the coolest products that I've seen, with the elasticity through all the change and all the marketplace to endure.
Enjoying the evolution of time and technology. And
I don't see any end to the PL8. That is still a foundation piece for almost every rig out there today. So
as long as the power will be wired, which is probably will be a while, because wireless current doesn't really exist. No, as long as the power will exist.
Wireless power sort of exists, but it's still hardwired somewhere, right? In the chain. So it's
Well,
it's a testament to the brand, and it's funny. I'm thinking back to my own racks that I have. Over time, I've changed so many of the different components, but the one thing that I haven't changed is the PL8. So it's a testament to how you guys are future-proofing all your products. Even a testament to the SFM portfolio, actually. I think it's been since the 70s that we've been distributing Furman.
Furman was one of the first.
Furman was the first distributor outside of domestic U.S. Into Canada. And when we started producing power products, and got out of the Furman sound products, and that's when the opportunity came. But it really came from the preamps and the noise gates and stuff, because rock stars were they were picking them up, and they were holding them. They were like, I record on Furman, I perform stage on Furman, I want my master tracking to be done on Furman. And Andy Garcia has the very first serial number 00001 of our first PEQ parametric equalizer, and it was through that, breaking free of the bass and treble world, and it was through that Furman sound that moved into Furman power that just fortified the fact that not only did Furman have a good idea about music, and they had a good idea about what impacts music the most, and that is the system noise, recording noise, stage performance noise, the environmental noise that's out there, to the point where we don't make much Furman sound product anymore. We make Furman power, because that makes everything post just so much more better, so much more effective.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us on Behind the Rack, and thank you, Wade, for stopping by and sharing your insights.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. It's a great time.
We definitely hope you'll come back
for sure,
for maybe a more in-depth. Anyways, we can talk forever about power and AV with you. So
we learned a lot.
So thank you again. There's just so much to talk about. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, hit that like, smash that subscribe, and share the episode with a colleague or an AV fan, and help us spread the word. We'll be back with more stories, insights, and conversations from the world of pro audio, live sound, and systems AV. So until then, keep the curiosity alive, and catch you on the next time on Behind the Rack.